Thanks so much for talking to me today.
Happy to do it, Mike. It's just certainly, it was a master's degree program in law in the sense of moving from a small practice to supervising approximately 90 people at the time, 35 of which were lawyers, and sort of attempting to understand the history of the office and of the U.S. Attorney in the Justice Department, and then implementing, what I saw and what our supervising staff saw as the best way to represent the people of the district. Probably the other huge issue at the time was the death penalty eligible case statutes that were implemented in the Clinton administration, unfortunately, probably wrongly.
Sure.
And dealing with that whole process, which I think we had in my 7 years, I want to say 12 or 13 death penalty eligible cases that took up a huge amount of time.
Sure. And something with death penalty cases is it's not something taken lightly. As I understand, It's got to go to Washington, D.C. There has to be approvals. It's quite a process for them.
Yeah, there's a whole internal process we set up. We had a death penalty committee that was made up not only of lawyers but staff people in the office who we looked at, or I looked at, as just ordinary citizens, so we should get their input as well as the legal end input, and paying really close attention to the history in Michigan of not having the death penalty, and then respectfully battling with Miss Reno. She was a great proponent of the death penalty, and I always took it that she was trying to balance the South and Southeast, and trying to find good cases of in the Midwest to bring death penalty cases, which I opposed each one of them, basically. Or our office opposed them. A horrible case. The guy was certainly deserving of huge punishment. But the office and I felt that there was huge legal questions about the situs of the act and whether it really fell into state jurisdiction or federal jurisdiction, national forests or state forests, believe it or not.
Wow.
And there was at the time not a good understanding of where it happened. And so we just decided it would be better off being state prosecution. But it ended up in our jurisdiction, but as a death penalty eligible case, and there was really a decision that, okay, if we're going to have to prosecute this, let's just prosecute it as a regular life sentence eligible kind of case. So we declined, and in a declination at the district level, all those at the time, all those went to Justice Department.
Wow.
And they were reviewed, and she had a death penalty committee of, I think there were 10 people that always sat on the other side of the conference table. And you would show up with the assistant who was in charge of the case, and Miss Reno would sit at the end here.
Wow.
And I think that was I can't remember how many trips I went to Washington to confront and defend my decisions. And she got so mad. She had it with me. I don't think I was her favorite U.S. attorney. And she gets up and starts, just going at it. And walked out of the room. And we adjourned. It was great.
Wow.
And the next day, Jim Robinson, who was the Wayne Law dean and past U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Michigan.
Yes. They still
And
talk
friend.
about him in Detroit.
Yeah, he is a great guy. He was a great guy, now deceased. And he was the assistant attorney general for the criminal division at the time under Clinton.
Wow.
And he calls me up and just said, "What did you do?" That was great. "What are you doing?" And I asked, "Am I still a U.S. attorney?" You know, and we were pretty good friends. And he said, "Well, she's recused herself and I have to make this decision." Wow. And so he, a couple of weeks later called me and said he sided with us and we're not going to go that way.
Wow.
And it was pretty interesting. But that was the kind of thing that was going on a lot, in the sense of tension, but civil tension, in the sense of you may be disagreeing with main justice. You literally have to throw yourself into it. But you have to keep your independence of judgment.
Sure.
And thought, and you have to be utterly honest with your client. And as a criminal defense lawyer,
That's a tough thing.
They're tough thing. There's far and few between purely innocent people.
Yeah.
And so for the majority of the people, you're trying to work out the best deal for them.
Mm-hmm.
And convince them that it's the best deal. And I think, like anything else, it's a matter of building trust and following through on that trustworthiness and on your best judgment.
Mm.
So, that just means you have to be prepared and know the law and experience that. I know you to be about is the collegiality. That does cross lines. That means that prosecutors and defense lawyers need to have that same kind of trust built and collegiality, and both sides knowing this is about the victim and it's knowing about the perpetrator, and how do you find justice between those two. I grew up on 6 Mile in Detroit.
Oh, West Sider?
East Sider.
East Sider, okay.
6 Mile by the airport.
Oh, great.
City Airport.
Oh, City Airport. Yeah.
And I had never left Detroit. Went to Wayne. And, I left Detroit for Michigan State, but then went back for law school, but never really traveled anywhere. And Jim Olson was at DCL, I was at Wayne, and our wives taught together in inner city of Detroit when we were in law school, and that's how we got to meet. I was down in Fort Benning, and he called me and said, "You want to come up to Traverse City and open a practice?" And I said, "Where's Traverse City?" And I had no job, and my wife, was with me, and so she had no job, and we came up here and opened a practice in a storefront that we repaired and made a law office, and each made $2,500 that first year of practice. And the rest is history. It just sounded like fun at the time, and it was great. I mean, one of our first cases was a federal case in front of Judge Fox when we sued the Traverse City school system because they had expelled some students, I can't remember names or who, but for having long hair and protesting the Vietnam War. And there was no long hair at the Traverse City High School. And we did this First Amendment case, and Judge Fox, who was one of the great federal judges of the Western District. He heard the arguments and then ordered the Traverse City, the entire Board of Education, to come down to Grand Rapids. And they sat in the front row. He made them sit in the front row of the courtroom. And he, I don't want to say lectured them, but he educated them on the First Amendment. And, you know, one of the most recent was the potential mall that was proposed to be built on the public land where the farmers market is. You know, that block between Cass and Union is all parkland, in essence. And there was a proposal to build an 8-story mall that would go along the parkway. But even and this had to be in the late 80s, no windows on that. So you'd have an 8-story building going between Union and State Street, or Union and Cass, that just blocked the entire bay off. In that one, actually, Grant Parsons, and I was involved with Grant on that, stopped that because you needed a vote of the people to transfer parkland into a private. And that, so there's always a battle.
Sure.
And right now we have the 10-story building battle. And I'm sure the next one's just around the corner. And it's just another one of those issues of vigilance.
Congratulations on the award.
Thanks. Whatever that is and however I got chosen for it, I have no idea.
Hey, well deserved, though.
When Mike Sullivan, who's the chair of that section, called me, I said, you know, I know what this is. This is the old Irish barb that, you know, you need, you for a wake, you need a body, but you don't expect them to say much. So. Yeah, cool.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, nice to get this chat with you.